Yep, I'm gonna put it on the YouTube channel. Yep, got it.
Thank you so much for coming out, guys. I really appreciate it. I know we're all very sleep deprived as parents of multiple. So we just want to introduce Heather Turgeon and Julie Wright. And they're going to help us get more sleep.
It's as simple as that.
Right?
So nice to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. So what we are going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about our approach to sleep. And then we're going to go through some healthy sleep habits, what we call healthy sleep habits. These are like the foundation of good sleep, and they help. They apply to all ages. They're just, some of them you're probably already doing. Maybe you can tweak a few. And then we're going to walk you through some of our techniques, just to give you kind of a sample of them, and then open it up to questions, because that would probably be the most helpful things to respond to what you guys are wanting to hear. But maybe just to get started, a show of hands so we can get an idea of how old the babies and kids are of yours. So does anyone have babies under 5 months? Oh, they're not born yet. Okay. I'm not super proud yet. You have babies on the way, yes, and twins under the age of 5 months.
Yeah, they're 4.5.
Okay. How about
About 4.5.
4.5? Okay.
Yeah.
So no little ones.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Aww.
Thanks for coming out.
Wow.
Something tomorrow.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah, congratulations. We'll go through kind of briefly a helpful technique for you that's sort of very specific to that age group. And then what about between 5 months and 24 months? Okay, and does anyone have over 24-month-olds? Okay, we got a little of everything.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to describe the overarching way of thinking about sleep. It applies to all ages, and then like Heather said, we'll break it down by ages.
Yeah. Okay, great. You want to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so the overall idea that we propose about sleep and the way we want you to come out of here thinking about sleep, and this is the great news is that this applies to all babies and kids, is that they're built to sleep. They actually want to sleep. Sleep is the natural way of things. It's not something that you need to make or train them to do. Sleep is a natural function, and it's what you need to have sleep unfold in a natural way are just the right patterns and associations. But when you have those, it's kind of remarkable how babies want to sleep after about the age of 5 months, 6 months. Once the circadian system is mature and they have the ability to self-soothe a little more, and we'll talk about a couple of developmental things that start clicking along at that age. After that age, really, there's not, it's sort of a myth that sleep has to be a big struggle, and that it has to be, that it's really hard to change a sleep pattern. It's absolutely very doable if you have the right plan in place. So what we want to help you do today is to tweak or to change a couple of things in the environment and the way you respond to your baby or toddler, but not with the idea that you're forcing them to sleep. You're basically we're going to help you learn how to step out of their way just enough with the right kind of support so that they can do what they're naturally built to do, which is sleep.
So why does it seem like it's so hard? We're telling you that it's not, and that it's a very natural, kind of primitive, hardwired function in the brain. But why is sleep the biggest issue for new parents and parents even of older kids? What happens? What happens? We have a baby who, over the course of the first 5 months, is acquiring all kinds of abilities and skills and maturation in their brains. We know that they can sleep better, but what we see over and over is little ones who are perfectly healthy, all of their developmental tracks are going right just the way we want them to go. And what happens around 4 or 5 months is that sleep really starts to tank, or I've talked to a couple of you already, sometimes sleep is going pretty well, and at 2 or 3 years of age we can get bumps in the road. There are always going to be bumps in the road regarding sleep, but the trick is to make sure that they're just bumps, they're just dips, not, you know, diving off a cliff. But what the main reason that babies sleep tanks, either at that sort of classic 5-month period or later, is that we parents end up doing for our babies and children what they can do themselves. This falling asleep, self-soothing to sleep is an innate capacity, it's natural, but when we help them more than they need, what happens? What do they then expect the next night when we do one of our helping ways? What happens next? They want it again. My dog, you know, gave her dinner twice, one time, and the very next night, after one time, she came asking for that second dinner. So, and her brain is like this big. So babies they're very quick pattern seekers. They pick up on things. They will definitely come to depend and rely on ways of helping them. And the tricky thing, and it's understandable that we get thrown off because little babies need help. Parents get a lot of support for how to help little babies, soothe them and turn them sideways and rock them and shush them, and all these great, you know, balls and bounces and the swings and there's so many devices out there. I don't even know what they all are. My parents were like, well, I did the rocking. But the thing that parents are not given support for is what comes next. And they're not given much information about how quickly babies develop. So we end up 5, 6, 7 months old. You know, I've had like moms with like 25 pounds, 7-month-old babies. Every time they wake up, they have to rock them in their arms for 45 minutes. And the older they get, the longer it takes and the harder it is to get them into the bed awake. Have you noticed that? Like when they're little, you can rock them, feed them all the way to sleep, put them down, they're fine. But the older they get. So the overarching principle as far as strategies go, and it differs by age, really has to do, like Heather said, with we're not training them, we're training you to do less. But the dilemma for parents is that we have to figure out a way to do it that also speaks to their need to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel tended to. We don't want to traumatize them, nor do we want to continue doing something for them that we know they can do themselves. So it would be sort of like the second your baby starts taking their first tottering steps, you swoop in and pick them up. Like you wouldn't dream of doing that. But with sleep, we get very confused. It seems like such a fragile time of day. So, these are some of the overarching ways that we think about sleep. And sometimes it's helpful to just write down quickly what kinds of helping ways you are using, and we're going to break them into, for the purposes of this list, we're going to break them into helpful and unhelpful. Helpful means things that they can do themselves and access themselves during the night to soothe, and unhelpful means things that they need to call out to you. So they have two choices. They can go into their internal process through their brain, the stem of their brain where their sleep centers are. They can self-soothe and fall asleep on their own. Or if they're reliant and expecting something from you, they're gonna reach outward. So how many of you, I don't know if anybody's young enough, but anybody here feed their baby to sleep anymore?
We don't feed them to sleep, but we do give them like 2 ounces of watered down almond milk before they go to sleep. And so then they have like, I don't know, that takes them like another 5 minutes to fall asleep. So it's not like, is that a yes? I mean, I don't know.
Are they drinking it as they're physically falling asleep? Are they drinking the milk?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is ways that they actually get them to fall asleep, so that they're not falling asleep.
Well, they finish the bottle, and then they have their pacifier, and they suck for, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, and then they fall asleep. So is that all right? It better be, because that's what's working.
But in the middle of the night they wake up,
How
and
old
the
are
only
they?
way to get them to sleep is
16
with the bottle,
months.
16 months.
and they will.
At 16 months,
Yes, they're
pacifier would
beautiful.
go under the category of helpful.
That would still
Pacifier is in the middle because for a baby who can't access it themselves or find it in their crib or reinsert it themselves, it falls into the unhelpful category because then you have to come and do it for them.
Okay.
For a 16-month-old who's most likely able to find it, that's a helpful association, I would say.
This is actually a
Sometimes
good
they
question,
can.
because when these babies wake during the night, as babies all do, they come through sleep cycles all night long. do they grab their pacifiers? And
Sometimes they grab it themselves, but sometimes they just kind of wham, we have to go and give it to them.
Right,
I
so-
mean, seriously, one
so
of them
the
had 4
pacifier-
pacifiers in her bed and she couldn't find
Okay,
it.
so if you have to give them the pacifier, it's an unhelpful sleep association.
Okay.
But there's no judgment here.
Sure.
I know, usually we don't put the unhelpful and helpful up until the end, so don't feel bad. It's not a.
It's not a judgment.
No.
It's just supposed to be, it's meant to be helpful. And it's just we're just trying to help you think about the way that they fall asleep. Because the way a child falls asleep at the beginning of the night at bedtime sets the tone for the whole night. If you get into your bed and you've got all your stuff and your pillow just so and everything you need, you wake up in the middle of the night, what do? Rearrange a little, turn over, and you're good. But what if you woke up in the middle of the night and you're like lying on the kitchen floor with no pillow or anything? You know, if they don't go into bed knowing exactly what they did to fall asleep, and then they wake up in the middle of the night like, oh yeah, I got my lovey, I got my thumb, I get my body in a comfortable position. That's what I did at the beginning of the night. If we change it for them and they wake up like, whoa, how did I get here? I was in this whole other thing. That's really one of the things that throws the sleep off the most. So the way that they fall asleep at the beginning of the night is really kind of the crux of improving sleep.
So the nursing team is bad.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not
I
bad.
tried to do the drain feed too, but he still wakes up like 2 months.
How?
2 hours, 2 hours.
How old?
After, like 4 months.
It's, I mean, it's still, yeah, that's an age when it can, the key at that age is to back off gradually, right? It's harder to back off gradually with an older baby, but we'll describe the technique for newborns that might be helpful for that.
And the 4 to 5 month age is often when sleep's getting worse and they're waking more often. So that's when that tanking happens. So that's probably what you're experiencing right now. Kind of weather that and then get.
Last night was bad.
Yeah, it's a very difficult time. Just out of curiosity, so we sort of know who we're talking about. I know a couple of people in here have read the book. How many of you have read the book or read parts of the book?
Let's cover.
You read the cover? Okay, not that many.
I think, why don't you keep talking, I'll write down
Okay.
common ones.
So feeding, we have like 2 people feeding to sleep? 2? Raise your hands if you're feeding to sleep. People who raised your hands before didn't, okay. It's not bad. How many are rocking to sleep? 2, 3. Bouncing.
What are you going to put next for everybody?
Anybody using the stroller?
Yes, when they want to go to
Wine?
sleep, I definitely use the stroller. Yep, if they don't fall asleep within about 15 to 20 minutes, I put them right in the stroller and take them out. And that happens maybe once a week.
So only one is using the stroller to fall asleep? Putting them in the car to fall asleep? I said yes.
Well, I have 3-year-olds, but I did that with her.
You did that
Yeah.
with her.
I do that, like my twins, they don't nap well on the weekends because my husband and I are usually ones putting them down rather than the nanny, so we'll resort to that on the weekends.
On the weekends, the car.
Yeah.
Okay, and how many of your babies are being put into their beds a little awake, or babies or toddlers? Anybody going into the bed a little awake? Your little teeny tinies?
Going into our beds or going into their beds?
Wait, which bed?
Oh, yeah.
Into, well, into wherever they sleep.
Like, we put them in the crib asleep, or awake.
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and you put them
No,
into,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what age are we talking
we're
about?
all ages.
Okay.
All ages, yeah. So we have a bunch here that are going into their beds awake.
We put one in her bed awake. We can't put them to sleep at the same time in the same room. We put them to sleep at the same time in separate rooms. But in the room at the same time, it's party time for them. So one of them in her bed with a video, she goes to sleep. The other one, we put her to sleep in the living room. So,
With it, you mean she's watching a video?
yes, lullaby video, baby Einstein lullaby video. And she goes to sleep usually within 5 to 10 minutes. Is that going in the unhelpful column?
I'll let Heather answer that.
No, I think that's, it's hard, the sound is, I mean, she's listening to a lullaby. So
Yeah, it's music and stuff.
The only thing I would say is it's probably alerting, a little bit alerting to her, just because the
Yeah,
the
I
light
pause
is-
it, and so then that's when she falls
Yeah.
asleep. Yeah, I just give her a couple minutes and then she falls asleep.
Okay, so when we come back to the techniques, you'll see where the helpful and unhelpful will come in really handy when we think about shifting from, our goal here is to shift from baby or toddler, preschooler falling asleep in an environment where they're in charge of their own bodies, their own getting comfortable, and they have the predictable routine and the consistency, and that when they come into those light periods of sleep, because baby sleep cycles and toddler sleep cycles are about an hour, and they sleep very deeply in the beginning of the night, but start to have more light sleep as the night goes on, and more opportunities for waking and stirring, and whatever pattern they had when they fell asleep is usually the one that they expect when they wake up, as Julie was saying. So when we talk about shifting the dynamics and changing those patterns, we're going to come back to the helpful and unhelpful and help you set up the helpful ones that will lead to the full night's sleep.
Let's just talk really briefly about also the development of the attachment relationship. We just like to explain, because a lot of parents really only learn about one side of attachment, which is the very real importance of responding to your baby, letting them know you're there, letting them know you help them when they need help, so that you build trust, you build inside of them a sense that the world is a safe place, and ultimately what happens is when babies feel that way, they internalize that sense, and they start to trust themselves, and they have what we call mental maps of the world. So they don't only feel safe with you, but they start to feel safe in general. The thing that happens developmentally with attachment, which I think a lot of parents aren't really explaining this side of, is that babies who feel safe and who feel secure are naturally going to then be more likely to go out and explore the world, master new skills, and become more independent. So this idea that sleep is natural and that over time babies are able to take over the role of self-soothing and feel confident and feel capable is absolutely in sync and goes together exactly well with attachment theory. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so we're really, one of the reasons we wrote this book is we really don't want parents to feel like they have to turn their backs on attachment, secure attachment to get good sleep. It doesn't make any sense to us at all. They're both, sleep should get better over time, and attachment looks more independent and capable over time. So that's really one of the things, our message is. We don't want you to feel guilty. We don't want you to feel bad. We don't want you to feel like, oh, I got so tired, I just had to do it, you know. But we also don't want you to shut the door and not go in. So we want to propose an approach that speaks to both, really.
The definition of attachment, and can you clarify that, what that means?
The definition of attachment?
Yeah, so like attachment to you, or is it attachment to the routine?
To the parent.
To the parent.
Yeah, attachment is a feeling that a baby initially and then a child has to each individual caretaker. So your children will have an attachment bond with you.
Right, okay.
They'll also have one with your partner, whomever. They might have one with a caretaker or grandma.
And it's so important because the quality of that attachment determines so much about the child's development in so many different realms, mental and physical and all of that. So it's such a foundational piece of their whole development that we want their sleep to be in sync, you know. Because the thing is, people say a lot of times that they've sleep trained their babies and they think of it as a finite thing that you do one time, and then sleep stays the same way, and that's just not true because babies change and they grow and they develop new skills, and then sleep starts to regress. Sleep is bumpy and children change, so every time they go through a transition, they get sick, you have a visitor, you travel, they start having nightmares, they start a new school. I mean, there's tons of different things that happen. So it's one of the reasons that we want to sort of get rid of the idea of sleep training. It just doesn't, it confuses people because it makes it sound like it's a thing you do one time. We want to give you an overall way of thinking about sleep that will help you through all stages of development and all things that come up, so you can constantly go back to this way of thinking about sleep in your house.
Should we go through the healthy sleep habits real quick? Yeah, so these are probably things you guys already know, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate them. Some of them are they're all really important. The first one is a regular early bedtime. When we say regular, we actually really mean almost like rigidly regular, not because we're rigid, but because it really harnesses the power of their internal clock if you hold their bedtime and don't waver it by much at all. Sometimes people say, within half an hour, and I'm kind of like, no, it's not terrible, but if you really can try to keep their bedtime solid, it's almost like a magic trick because their internal clock knows that it's time.
And by bedtime, you mean the time you begin the cycle, or the time
the
that they
lights go
actually
out.
fall asleep? The time the lights go down.
Lights go out and you walk out of the room.
Yeah, so in our model, ultimately, from 5 months on, babies or children are put down awake. So it doesn't mean that your baby is always falling asleep at that moment. Some children take a little longer than others, but it is the time. We call it just the time that lights go out and you walk out of the room.
Can I just ask about that? Because I have 17-month-old twins, and they sleep together, so they interact a lot. Like after the lights go out, they're still kind of playing around with each other, and so the actual sleep time varies tremendously.
Are they in separate cribs?
They're in separate cribs, but they're side by side.
Side by side. Okay.
How long do they talk for?
Some days one will go down early and ignore the other one,
Yeah.
or other days they'll go on for like an hour plus, just kind of laughing at each other.
That's so cute. That's so cute. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that we also want to look at overall sleep time and make sure that our babies are getting enough sleep. So I would just want to sit down with you and map it out, make sure they're getting 11 to 12-hour nights, and if they're not, maybe backing up the bedtime routine start time a little so that they have that time. Sometimes if they might get to the point where they're chattering so long that they miss their sort of optimal sleep window, and it's harder for them to fall asleep, so then I might start the bedtime routine a little earlier so that we can kind of hit that window. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, this is jumping a little bit ahead, but is
That's
there
okay.
a way, is there something in your mind, a parameter when you actually separate the twins and kind of give them a chance to kind of?
It's a personal decision. I think I don't have twins, but I did. I want to keep them together. But I think everybody has to decide. I think the studies show that they actually help each other. They support each other and they feel very safe with each other. So you certainly don't have to separate them. I know some people choose to, and that's totally fine too. But I wouldn't say, I don't see that as a problem. I see it as really so sweet. They're bonding with each other.
Help each other when they have one has a nightmare or something like that. But then what happens in the daytime is one will wake up and wake them up.
Oh, for a nap.
Anyways, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, the decision about keeping them together, even keeping their schedules together is I'm sure multiple parents know, is an individual one. Some people choose to keep them on the same schedule and some don't. How many of you keep your twins in the same room for sleeping? Yeah, see, it's more common. How many of you don't? Yeah, it's more common.
Well, I can tell you too, I have 3-year-olds now, and they did the same thing, twin girls, and they were very chatty, and but as time progressed, as they became more independent too, one would say, I'm really tired now, you go to sleep. And then the other would go, well, talk to me, I want to talk a little longer. And she'd go, and then mama wants us to go to sleep. And then they go out, so it does vary, but I noticed that, they become more aware of their own needs, as they get a little older too. But that's more of a toddler thing, and I don't have any problem with sleeping, but it's, it is an individual thing, we have to see. But I noticed it helped early on, and then you sort of reach that breaking point, and then they sort of start telling each other, like, I'm tired,
When you say early, what does that mean? 6:30?
Well, our favorite bedtime is around 7. So 6:30, 7:30. The common mistake is waiting too long. Babies get overstimulated and overtired, and they have a harder time falling asleep. They also have a harder time stretching their sleep out to be as long as they need it to be. Yeah. I was having memories of, I slept with my sister as a kid. She was quite a bit younger than me, and I used to say, wait up for me, because I got to go to bed later. And I'd come in the room and she'd just be like clinging to me. Because she wanted to please me, and I'd be like, okay, let's play, do all kinds of things. Heather's kids sleep together and they talk.
They do, but they're a little older, they're 3 and 6, and they know we have the technique that we have called the reverse sleep wave is a 5-minute period where they know they can talk for 5 minutes, and I come in after 5 minutes, and they know that but they really, I think they regulate each other. They feel comfortable together. They like it. There's a feeling of security and.
They process
I think
some
they're all-
things, don't they?
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
process.
oh yeah, they had, there's all kinds of
Their
things.
day,
that-
talk about their day.
Yeah, I've recorded their voices of what they say to each other. It's
It's
hilarious.
hysterical, right?
But I think that the benefits definitely outweigh the cost. But I think you have to extra protect the early bedtime because there is that chance that they stay up a little. So I think just making sure they get into bed at the right time.
So what is everybody's
Earlier.
experience if the twins sleep in one room but they during nap time? I mean, I think at night you still have the 11-hour stretch somehow, but nap time is like, you know, if one wakes up, I'm assuming the other one wakes up, and then eventually it could be a change. Right? So what?
Ours don't wake each other up.
Yeah.
I just don't have that big stuff.
You actually saw our twins during the day with you now.
Well, they don't anymore because we separated their beds, one's on one side of the room. But now all of a sudden they realize, you know what, we separated their beds, that's when the sleep got worse.
I wonder, can you separate the beds and have white noise going and sort of
That's
have
what
a
we got.
monitor where you would hear the first one wake up quickly and come in and
Yeah,
sleep
somehow
on
they
that?
don't wake each other up anymore. They used to like throw pacifiers and then.
It's actually another facet of the side of attachment that we don't usually talk about, that when babies and kids are happy on their own, even during waking hours, and not constitute waking hours because they're not asleep yet, just to let them be. I mean, that's such a lovely thing. Just that they're in there talking, or what, you know, a singleton baby, you know, just googling in their crib when they wake up in the morning. Those are really special times where they're starting to get comfortable with themselves. So, those are good questions. So the early bedtime and the set bedtime is very important. The bedtime routine is very important. It's good to establish a bedtime routine almost from the beginning. And I think the thing to think about, Heather and I like to talk about, we're sort of trying to help parents remarket the idea of sleep as being something pleasurable and something that the whole family looks forward to. And we have dimmers, and we dim our lights, we put soft music on, we put some soft clothes on, and we get some books that we love to read to our kids. And we really, it doesn't have to be elaborate or hours and hours, but we really think of bedtime as a really lovely time so that our kids pick up from us on this feeling of going to bed is something that we get to do, not something I have to do. Come on, we gotta get to bed, it's getting late, you know, or you're cranky, you know, put your bed early tonight. We're trying to change the way we talk to our kids because sleep can be we think of sleep as a pleasurable thing. So it really helps them when you do that. So the bedtime routine can be anywhere from, for teeny tinies, 30 minutes. It usually grows to about 45 minutes to an hour. And couple of things. One thing with little tiny babies, not when they're newborns, but fairly soon after, is to think of not having their feet be the very last thing, so that with a little baby you might give them their last feeding and then, you know, maybe just walk around with them and say goodnight to the things in the room and sing a song and put them down or something like that, just to break that very common association between feeding and falling asleep. But we also like to see their routines grow with them and start to include books and songs. And we like sometimes for certain children is to include what we call child-led play as part of their routine, where they get to be down on the floor and sort of do whatever they want to do, and not anything wild, you know. And that can help them shift to sort of I'm in charge mode, which is where we want them to be to fall asleep. So bedtime routines are very important. It's actually very important to do routines for naps too. We kind of think especially in the beginning, they have to take so many naps. We kind of feel like little babies again, they nap all the time. You don't have to do an elaborate routine, but as soon as they kind of are aware of night and day and that the rest of the house is awake while they're being expected to go to bed, taking them into a darker room and having a nice routine is really helpful. And Heather's had a lot of success lately with older children, maybe 5 months and older, having their feed be in a different room and then having the rest of their routine happen in their room, just to sort of break that association as well.
I have a question on the routine, like, should it be me or my husband? Do you think that really makes a difference? Should it be just my husband?
It's very good for it to be one or the other or both so that you have flexibility. Yeah, sometimes it gets into a routine of being one parent and then difficult for the other parent to do it if one parent
Switch it up.
Yeah, I think it's nice for lots of reasons.
Yeah, I
switch it out.
really do it because that's like the bonding time too, but.
So
It's
couples
very
do it
messy.
together too, which I think is really sweet. But I think it's good to do it different ways so there doesn't become a reliance